Another good way to remember all the modes that I find helps me a lot is to think of them as more of major and minor modes. So as soon as we know that the Ionian mode is exactly the same as the major scale, we already know that already, and the minor scale that I've already taught you is the Aeolian mode. So that's about a quarter of the modes already learned. So the next modes are the modes that tend to be minor and tend to be major. So for example, the Dorian and the Phrygian modes are very similar to the natural minor scale, but they have one note that is slightly different. But that one note is very prominent in the chords that are used underneath the mode, and accenting that note is also important as well. For example, in the key of E minor, that is the E Aeolian mode. But if you wanted to play E Phrygian, the only thing you have to do to that set of notes is flatten the second from an F sharp to an F. So E Phrygian would look like this. If we wanted to play E Dorian, the only note we'd have to change is the sixth, and we sharpen that C to a C sharp. So E Dorian would look like this. So for example, the E minor scale, also known as the Aeolian mode, would look like this in one octave. But if we wanted to look at the Phrygian mode, the only thing we need to do to that minor scale is flatten the second. So we flatten the F sharp to an F. So this is the E Phrygian mode. But of course the chords that are underneath that mode will make it what it is. It is very different to the normal E minor scale. So the E Dorian mode is also the same as the E minor scale, but with a sharpened sixth. So the C that we normally play would become C sharp. So the E Dorian mode would look like this. I'll play it to you again. For me, this is an easy way to remember Dorian and Phrygian modes in one octave. And once you've learned them in one octave, you can apply them to as many octaves as you like all over the guitar. They're very, very similar to the minor mode, but with one note changed. Okay, so in regards to the major modes, we know that the Ionian scale is the same as the major scale. But how would we find Lydian? If we took our E major scale again, the Lydian mode is the same as the E major scale, but with a sharpened fourth. So the Lydian mode would look like this. The Mixolydian mode is the same as the major scale, but with a flattened seventh. So the E Mixolydian mode would look like this. Okay, and for the final mode, which is Locrian, a good easy way for you to remember it in one octave is this. If we're talking about E Locrian, then if you play your E note here on the 7th string, and then go up the F major scale, but as your second note up to the E, that would give you E Locrian, which would look something like this. So that is E Locrian. So if you imagine the major scale but a fret up, but you start from the E, so you play your E, then the F major, and that is a good trick to remember the E Locrian scale. Obviously all these are just shortcuts to think of the scale. To to determine the chords that go underneath it, you really have to look back to your what major scale is this mode derived from. So for example, if we have the F Lydian scale, that is derived from the C major scale. So all the chords that would be involved with F Lydian will be coming from the notes that are in the C major scale. So those are just kind of shortcuts for 1 octaves for soloing, but really you have to think back to what major scale does this originally belong to. Like for example, that is the F Lydian scale, but E Lydian, the chords that it belong to would be the B major scale. So E Lydian, like I taught you, is this. With a sharpened fourth. And that would belong to the B major scale. So all the chords that you normally use within the confines of B major, you can use and apply with E Lydian. The same can be thought of with E Phrygian. That comes from the C major scale. So all the chords that are used within the confines of C major can be used with E Phrygian. But if you want to play E flat Phrygian, then all the chords that would be used within the confines of E flat Phrygian would come from B major. If you wanted to use C sharp Phrygian, then it would be A major. B Phrygian would be G major. That's where the chords would come from. And A Phrygian would be F major. So those are just shortcuts basically for you to think of the modes within 1 octave. But it is best to come back to where they come from. It's all relevant to the chords that you're playing over the top of that will define the mode basically in which you're playing.